And all right, good.
Okay, so thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm very excited to introduce Ryan McGowan from RPM High Performing Performance Coaching. Um, Ryan has a passion for professional development and created his own business to coach college students and others to become their best selves. So I'm so excited to learn more about LinkedIn and creating a professional, amazing resume from you, Ryan. So I'll leave it to you.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Carrie.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in tonight. So this is the third part of a series that the library and I have been working on called Maximizing Your College Experience. The first session we did 2 weeks ago was about the transition to college, just some tips about how do you adjust because it is very different than high school and what can you do that it may take a few years to learn from day one to help make things go more smoothly and so you can get the most out of it. Last week, we covered looking for jobs and internships, what that looks like, the differences between the two, some techniques you could use on campus or with your network you're building on campus to find some kind of way to earn some extra money or get some really valuable experience while you are a student and why you should be looking to do that. And then we thought today would be a nice way to cap off this series by taking those transition skills that um, push to look for a job or internship, and then finalize it with the introduction you need to know what you're looking for in your LinkedIn profile. How do you build a resume? I even threw a little piece in tonight too about a cover letter because oftentimes that goes hand in hand with the resume, making sure that we have all of that covered. So if you are able to, find a really great opportunity even your first year, you're not unprepared. So you have something ready to go. So before we start, especially since some of you are new tonight, I always like to start off by saying congratulations for graduating. I know senior year took a bit of a strange turn over the last couple of months, but no matter what, you still graduated. That's a nice accomplishment. And also thank you for joining us tonight. It's a summer evening. You don't have to be here. I do appreciate seeing people care about their development and taking the next step. So about that fall semester, everything that I've said the past couple weeks, if you access these videos when the library makes them available, has always been with the mindset that we will be on campus in the fall. And with that being said, this type of session tonight is helpful because LinkedIn, a good resume ready to go, are becoming much more of a necessity as things become more digital. Because oftentimes now, instead of maybe a face-to-face interview, your LinkedIn profile is going to be scrutinized more closely, and that could just be what leads to an interview or not, and then to the next opportunity. So regardless of what happens in the fall, what I'm saying tonight, these skills will be absolutely applicable no matter what landscape you're facing as we move forward over the next year or so. So that's what's nice about tonight is these skills are not conducive to or limited just to one particular type. And I also want to add that personal help is available, especially with building your LinkedIn profile or your resume. That takes a lot of understanding of who you are, what your personality is, what you've accomplished so far, and more importantly, how can you communicate that very effectively with people who are different than you, so they also see how important what you've done has been so far. So with that being said, keep in mind that you can always contact me. I'd be happy to set up some time and take a deeper dive into your personal situation and what we can do to maximize your online presence, your profile, your resume, and make sure you're getting looked at for the opportunities that you deserve to be looked at for. So a little bit about me then. I am from the area. I graduated from South Fayette High School in 2015. Then I went to John Carroll University in Cleveland, and there I got a Bachelor's of Science in Business Administration. I was with a major in finance, and I had a minor in computer science. Since last June, so about 1 full year and a few weeks now, I've been working at Covestro in Robinson. I've been what they call a commercial rotational program member or a commercial trainee. So I go through 6 different jobs. Thank you. Thank you, Carrie, for adding that. Yes, that's my email. Jack, feel free to reach out to me. I've been working at Covestro, and I like this job because it's an 18-month program, so I'm about 12 out of the 18 months into it so far. I rotate through 6 different jobs, getting a good overview of a lot of different sides of the business. And that's actually an experience that has helped me see how important LinkedIn is because I have to update it all the time. I'm very active on it right now with making sure my future managers know who I am and what I've been accomplishing and so forth. When I'm not doing work or professional development activities like this, my big hobbies, I love to golf, I love to run, and I love to read. All right, so let's get started with LinkedIn. I chose this one first because I think what's really nice about LinkedIn is in some ways it's a lot less rigid and formal than a resume is, and it's something that today you can make, within the span of maybe half an hour without getting into the formalities of a resume, but still having something that you can begin impactful professional development and networking type of work. So let's go over some of the basics of LinkedIn. It's a professional social media. It's really all it comes down to. It's a place where professionals can go and share news stories that are interesting to them, updates about their company, updates about themselves professionally, and oftentimes now as things are getting more personal in a working environment, people are sharing a lot more personal information on LinkedIn too about their families or things at work that have impacted them or how they've benefited or been hurt by things in the world around them. And it's a really good way to get a feel for the pulse of the community that you want to go into or that you're in already. So, for example, I follow obviously my company, a lot of people that I work with, but also a lot of people who I've met at events that maybe are suppliers of our company or customers of my company. And that gives me a chance to see what they're posting, what they care about. So next time I meet them, I'm able to talk more about maybe I see something that their kids have done, or I see something about a trade convention that they've gone to. So you're able to get a lot more of that help when you need to talk to people. Keeps you updated on what everybody around you is doing. It's the best way, in the easiest way, and the cheapest way. You can pick any adjective that's good, and it's that superlative to build and maintain a network because it's free. It takes you practically zero effort to reach out and find people, and you'd be surprised at what kind of connections you can make just as we move through. We're already halfway through 2020. People are just so much more likely at this point now to respond to a message you send them because it takes no effort on their part either, and people know how much benefit can come from a program or a platform like LinkedIn. So you see a lot of this mutual communication, a lot of help, people asking for mentors and receiving it pretty often. So it's a great way to build and maintain a network, especially like if you go to things during your first year of college. You're not going to have a business card. You're not going to really have any kind of formal way of being contacted. If you already have a good profile, it means a lot if you can ask permission to connect with somebody, follow up with them, connect. You're going to really stand out to them. It's going to look really, really good. It is the best way to brand yourself professionally. You see now how much companies are paying for consultants on their branding, how much ad campaigns change and matter and affect the way the public views a company. Well, that same thing happens with you too. And that's where LinkedIn really comes in handy as a way to build that and make it yours and take total control of it. And all of this boils down to the fact that LinkedIn is really something you should be involved in constantly because it can lead to new opportunities very easily. A couple hours a week of managing some content, posting some things that you found interesting, commenting on friends' posts, etc., and messaging people you think are interesting really can open a lot of doors for you, whether it's another internship, new job opportunity, or a lifelong connection and mentor. So you have nothing to lose and everything to gain from signing up for LinkedIn, following some of my advice tonight, and trying to just improve yourself. That's what we're all out there doing. So let's have a quick, PowerPoint's stuck here. There we go. Let's talk about professional branding for a second. So you already have a personal brand, whether you know that or not. It could be everything down to the type of music you like, people associate with you. If you have a particular brand of clothing you like and wear a lot, people maybe think of it when they think of you. Just like how you can differentiate in your head between like Nike and Adidas, people can differentiate between you and maybe a sibling or a friend because of the things that you do that's unique and that make you you. That's all branding is. It's a very fancy word for saying, the characteristics and the tendencies that make you yourself. And now you need to kick that to another gear and develop a professional one. And I think for most people, the most successful professional brands are the ones that match their personal brand. Uh, I'm sure you've already had an experience where you've met someone and you just like walk away and you can tell that they're fake or just don't get a right feeling from that. And the same thing happens professionally too. You can walk away from an interview if you're trying to be someone you're not. You're not going to feel right about it. People interviewing you are going to know it, and they're not going to really care for you either. And just like if you've been impressed by someone and you apply for a job at their company based on what you've seen on LinkedIn, for example, based on their professional branding, and you meet with them, you might walk away going, that's not at all what I was advertised. That's not what I was being sold. And that's where you want to build that brand so it matches. And so you can really take control of that message yourself. And LinkedIn is such a great way to take that professional branding to another level and make it something that you're confident with, because that makes a huge difference when you're interviewing and when you're looking for new positions. Basically, you want to be asking yourself, what should an employer know about you? And that's where I've said before that you're starting to see more personal information make it onto LinkedIn too. A lot of people that I've been working with, for example, right now at Covestro, we're doing a LinkedIn social program called Stay at Home STEM, just knowing that schools have been closed and been a little harrowing for some of the parents. So a lot of our chemists have been pitching in and doing really easy science experiments with involving chemistry with stuff you can do in your house. And it's been great because people I work with, I get to watch them make these videos maybe with their kids or in their houses and like with their dogs or pets. And it really helps you build this idea of who they are, because I've known them in work and now I get to see them out of work. It's this really great system where you sort of get this clearer picture of who people are. And so that's what you're going to be asking yourself. It's what is the best version of me, the best version of me that I can show employers, colleagues, everybody that's out there. And that's where LinkedIn really, really shines. And also your branding comes down to the Google test. I don't know if you've ever done this yet, but it's always a really good exercise to just go into Google, Bing, DuckDuckGo, any of the search engines you prefer, and just search your name and see what comes up. Like for me, it's always funny because I get an MMA fighter and an Australian soccer player a lot. So, but then I add in like Ryan McGowan, Covestro, and the first like 10 results are either posts of mine from LinkedIn, or things that I've been tagged in with other people from like volunteering events, are things like my personal social media, which is fine because I'm careful about that too. That's a whole nother conversation we could have. Um, I could even search my name in college, and there's articles that I've been mentioned in from like the business college at my school, or like my merit page, which a lot of colleges do as a way to showcase your achievements. So it's good. Like mine checks out. I've built over the last couple of years a brand that holds up to the Google test. If you search my name and my city or something identifying about me, positive results that I'm proud of show up constantly. And that's what you should be using LinkedIn for. If you build that engagement online, just like popular websites always filter up at the top, if your profile is getting engagements for good reason, because you're posting good things, you're commenting, you're active properly, you'll be surprised at how quickly you'll see what comes up for you professionally too, not just personally. All right, so let's getting started with LinkedIn. All you do is just go to linkedin.com, join now, and the first thing too is a professional picture. You want to do your contact info. All right, but also you want to work on your email too. So I don't know what your email is, but and it just doesn't have to be anything like ridiculously formal. Just make sure it's nothing too embarrassing. I know, like for a lot of us who grew up with email, we may have made an account when we were like 10 or 12. It may not always have the best or most professional names. Just make sure you're picking ones that you're not embarrassed to give out to people, because they can see it in your profile and they're going to judge you for it. So make sure you have a good email, and then also a professional picture. And this could be anything from nice, like even just like a shirt like I'm wearing right now, collared shirt. It can be button down shirt, whatever it may be. The most important thing is that it's composed, clean, well lit, not a selfie, taken in a good environment, and just shows you as someone that people would want to approach. Also, next step, you have to put in all of your contact information. Put your region. For the region, put in the area that's broad enough where you'd feel comfortable moving anywhere in it. So like, for example, mine says Greater Pittsburgh region. You can get really specific and put like South Hills, or you could put like just Pittsburgh itself. That's all pretty open because hopefully you have enough other identifying things that people can find you more easily. But keep in mind that that does affect how recruiters can filter and find you. So that's why I always personally pick a larger region, just because it helps me show up in more search results. Also, and this is really important, especially for someone who's only 18, 19 years old, avoid student language. So one that goes even for unspoken language. So like your profile picture, don't make it you in a cap and gown. People already know that you're young. You don't want to reinforce to them that you're inexperienced and young. So you want your picture to be something that makes you look, if anything, a little bit older. So maybe suit and tie, something like that, where you're not seen as a student, as a kid, as someone immature. And that goes even the next step too, when we're talking about like the headline. So that's something you can fill in, and you should fill in on LinkedIn. And it appears below your picture and describes who you are. A lot of people you'll see when you go to college put student at blank university or student studying blank. You're wasting the space. So avoid that student language. Pick something powerful. And it's okay that you don't have a real position. So this is where just a quick online search really can yield a lot for you. Say, for example, like I'm a little biased and experienced with finance, so I'm going to use that as like one of my go-to examples for a lot of this. You know, my whole time in college, my LinkedIn profile headline was never was never like student at John Carroll University or finance student. It was always aspiring financial analyst or aspiring financial professional looking for opportunities in blank. And it seems wordy, but you have to remember when recruiters are using it, they're filtering too based on another program that they have access to, where they just type in words that they're looking for in your profile. I promise you, no one's ever typing the word student into that search box. So you're wasting the space that can get you noticed if you call attention to the fact that you're currently a student. So a quick search for your keywords, would find like under finance would be analytical, um, you know, data analysis, things of that nature. And so you want to put that in your headline so people can find you more easily. So when you're building the rest of your profile, after your headline, after the about section, there's a lot of opportunities to customize it however you want. There's at least 10 or 12 sections ranging from your education, volunteer experience, professional experience, like your other interests. There's like associations or like other memberships you might hold. There's plenty of areas to add content to LinkedIn, and you can structure it however you want. Personally, that's something I don't want to recommend too much you do without really getting a chance to meet you, because that's where your personality can really shine. Is if you're really proud of a lot of volunteer work that you've been able to accomplish, that can go top spot because it's something you can be proud of and people know that's something you value. So LinkedIn gives you that important ability to make a value proposition in every section. Since everything can be customized, you can really enter all the information you need to show somebody looking at your profile how you make something better, how you add value to the thing that you're participating in. And that's what people look for when they're looking to hire you, whether it's for an internship or a job. So the clearer that message is in every piece of your profile, I promise you that will translate to better results and getting you more accepted connections, getting you more interview requests, getting you more everything that people use LinkedIn for. Also, you have the ability to enter a summary on your LinkedIn profile, and I could not recommend that enough. Recruiters do not look at your page for very long, and if you can't do anything that would hold them there or do anything that makes them interested in who you are, you're going to lose them. So the summary is a great spot on LinkedIn where you can do that. LinkedIn gives you 2,000 characters to enter into a box to tell your story, make something interesting about yourself. Like I know for me, I actually get a lot of comments on my summary. It starts with a very simple sentence. I say, I can make your company or team better. And then I say why, and I say how, because I'm curious and I'm hardworking and I'm not afraid of new challenges and trying new things. And I give examples of how I did that. And that gets me a lot of positive comments, because people like being told, this is why you should be looking at my profile. This is what you should be getting from what you see down here below. Um, and it shows my personality a little bit. I even put a little bit about there about like my Myers-Briggs and my strengths finders, because I know a lot of recruiters are starting to look at that too. So it's really your space to show how these words on a screen reflect you. So don't be afraid to be funny in that. Don't be afraid to tell a heartwarming story about how, like, maybe when you get to college, maybe you change your major because of an experience you had somewhere. Tell that in detail. Like, don't be afraid. That's your spot to speak with your voice. Maybe not be the most professional, but be the most you. And that really has a lot of power. Don't hold back on the education section either. So at this point in your life, education is pretty much the only thing you've done. So go into a lot of detail on that section. Put GPA if it's pretty solid, put class rank if you know that, put any activity that's been associated with your school and your education, and continue that through college. And then once you get out of college, you can you can pare it back a little bit and clean it up and reduce it to more of the most important stuff once you have other experience too. But for like your first year of school, that's the section that has to shine, because that's what you're there for. You're there to be learning and to be working and educating yourself. And put as much data and detail as you can in the experience section. So whatever you have right now, whether you've worked as a server or like a busboy, or if you've worked at some kind of like retail job, put data in there about, is there any evidence that sales go up when you're on shift? Is there any evidence that like table turnover is faster when you're working? And put a lot of detail in there too. Don't just say clean tables or server. Explain like the customer service side of it. Explain conflict resolution. Explain pieces of that experience that you've had to learn how to do that people may not think of when they hear that job. And finally, the last tips for the LinkedIn profile here is make sure you change your profile URL, because you want to make sure it's something that that's easily found. For example, like my LinkedIn profile, I have changed to be linkedin.com/in/Ryan P. McGowan. Unique enough that no one else had it, which was thankful, because my name is pretty common, so I was able to get that. And so to do this, you just go to your LinkedIn profile, you click on me, you go to your settings, and you can do edit profile or public profile and URL. And you can type whatever you want. So I recommend your name, maybe a middle initial, to make yourself easy to find. And that way you can send it cleanly to someone if they ask for your profile. It's not just this big, ugly string of characters. You also want to make sure everything is set to public visibility. And I know maybe on personal social media, you choose to stay private for some things, and that's perfectly fine. And I still recommend that. But on LinkedIn, it's different. Your picture, contact information, the about section, the summary, your experience, all needs to be made public. That's the whole point of this network, is for recruiters who maybe are not already connected with you to be able to find you. So don't be afraid to put that access out there, because that's the only way you're going to get contacted about opportunities. All right. So now, as you take the time to build your LinkedIn profile, and I'm also running this presentation in the order that I would recommend doing it as well. I would make the LinkedIn profile first, put as much on there as you want, and then from there you can condense into a nice clean resume. And you'll see why in a second here. So overall with the resume, first things first, I want to talk about what not to do, because this is what will get your resume tossed very quickly if you're submitting anything. Don't use a template. I promise you a recruiter has already seen it. It's not going to impress them. It's not the way to go. Do not include an objective or summary section. If you spend any time really online looking this up, like building your first resume, it's going to be pretty like 50-50. You're going to see some recommendations talking about adding your objective or your summary statement to your resume. Don't waste your space on the objective of this is to get this job or is to gain employment in this. They know that, because that's why you're handing them a resume. So save everybody's time, save your very valuable space, and skip the objective or summary section. I've never used it. It has never hurt me. None of my friends have ever used it. they all have been employed. Like, it really is not something that matters at this stage of your life. Do not write in first person either. So when you are looking at the bullets under your experience, it shouldn't be, I did this, I did that. In fact, we'll get to a little bit later, but there really shouldn't be any subject. I have a theory for why that is, and I'll talk about that later too. Also, and this should be obvious, but I hate that I even have to say this, do not fabricate experience. We can talk about ways to improve your wording a little bit and make things sound better to recruiters using keywords, but that's very different than making up experience. So at any point, if you feel like you're crossing a line, you know what you did and what you didn't do. So stop if you feel like you're getting to that point. Now let's go over some tips. It really helped me, and I think this is my first recommendation when I help someone with their resume, is I just tell them to make an outline first, because that way it takes away some of the pressure, at least even some of the mental association with the word resume. Sometimes it makes you freeze up or try to make things sound more impressive than they are. But rather, just come up with an outline of what you've accomplished, whether it's service things, whether it's involvement in a religious organization, whether it's something at the school that you go to. Just start listing down big picture things that you've done, and then keep revisiting them and drill deeper and deeper and think, okay, well, I was maybe on a board of this club or like on a committee for this club, and we did this, this, and this, and just start listing it all out. Don't worry about what it looks like, how long it is. You just want that master list. Also, your name and contact information should always go at the top of the page. I like it when your name and contact info is a little bit bigger than everything else, just to kind of call attention to who you are, and if they like what they see, how to get in contact with you. Because if you ever go to like a recruiting fair, they're going to get, these recruiters are going to get dozens, if not hundreds of resumes. So just make it easier for them to like thumb through it all and see, like, oh yeah, there's Jack. Like, I'm going to grab that one. Also, at this point in our careers, you should always start with your education section first. Because like I said, even if you're 17, 18, 19 years old, other than maybe a summer job here or there, like maybe working at a restaurant or like a retail store, pretty much the only thing you've done is education. So be proud of that and put that front and center, because that still shows a lot about what you've been able to accomplish, because you're expected to be doing it. So if you can show you're doing it well, you're going to stand out nicely. So put that education section on top and be proud of it. In fact, I'll show you my resume here in a little bit, and you'll see I still have the education section first, because I've only been working for a year. Like, I really have a lot of accomplishments still to show through my education. So here's a visual of the idea of that outline again. You want to talk about any awards or scholarships you've been selected for, any jobs that you've had, paid or unpaid. It doesn't matter if you help out an aunt, uncle, parent, friend, neighbor with something. If you babysit, like, those all count as things that you can be doing and put them on your resume. The same with service, whether it's something that you do through school, through a team, something you do on your own accord, whatever it is, anything you've done that you haven't been absolutely required to do through school, you can put on your resume in some way. So if you sit there and think about these three components and what it really can count for these, you're going to eventually distill down a list of transferable skills. And transferable skills are what you should be trying to distill in everything that you work on. So from this point forward, everything you do, you should think of what is a word that can describe something that I'm practicing here or something that I'm learning here. Because from this list of skills is where you can then look for keywords that, there's actually really helpful websites that compile phrases and words that come up in popularity for certain jobs or certain majors. So like, say you want to go into like computer programming or something, you can actually do, like, in 5-10 minutes, you can find resources online that show you over time popularity of words like Python and Java, C++, and you can, and like versus like full stack developer, and like you can really see in the last like month, what are recruiters looking for? What do they need to see? And if you know your backbone skills, you can then customize your wording to match those new keywords that are becoming popular. It's all about knowing yourself really well so you can explain it in different ways to different people. So some tips with your resume. it can only be one page. I've seen some things mixed about that, where it's like if you have a lot of volunteer experience, you can put it on a second page, or if you have a lot of like awards, you can put it on a second page. You really can't. A way that was kind of harsh, but it always stuck with me, that someone in college described it to me at the time. I was like a sophomore. It's like, you are 19 years old. You have not done anything important enough to justify a second page. I was like, oh, that's fair, because this recruiter was talking to me and said, I don't even have, a 2-page resume, and they were in their 40s working at the company for years, like in a higher level position. It's like, you can condense everything down to one page. If you can't, you have a communication problem. I was like, well, I guess that's a good way to look at it, I guess, because you have to remember the point of the resume is to showcase quickly who you are, to make them want to talk to you more. It's not supposed to be this explanation of everything you've ever done. It's supposed to intrigue them, to make them want to talk to you more, or then you can explain it and really tell the story of your development and of your work experience. To help you with that one page, you can shrink the margins down a little bit. Like my resume, the margins are 1/2 inch on the sides. Like I do kind of get a little greedy with that one, but try to keep it within that 1/2 inch to 1 inch range. Any more and it looks like you're just wasting space, and that's stuff you could be using for valuable information. And any less, and it just is really hard to read. So it's a fine line to walk. Typically, it's really easy for the recruiters. They're kind of trained to do this. If you put the name of the organization that you either worked for, volunteered for, or the school you go to on the left side of the screen, and then put the date that you did that work or were at that school on the right side of the page. And it's just kind of a nice way to give a little bit of spacing, because that's appeasing, like pretty nice to look at. And just because we are a left to right reading culture, that's just how a lot of recruiters are used to it, and it just helps get your message across very easily if you set it up that way too. And now let's talk about fonts. You can change it, you can be a little different, no problem, but this all depends on where you're going to work and what you want to do. If it's a little bit more of a conservative environment, if it's a little bit more of a more traditional business, definitely try to keep it to like Arial, Times New Roman. Here's a list of fonts, and I put them in their font so you can kind of see the difference. These 6 or so are pretty standard. I've seen on a lot of different resumes. I personally use Georgia on mine. I just always kind of liked it. And they're all the same size too. So you can see the difference in how they show up on a page. And that's also something really good you can keep in mind if you're kind of struggling to get it to one page, or you don't like the way it looks. Changing from Arial to Garamond can make a huge difference, just because the characters are slightly different sizes. So if something is 2 pages under Tahoma, maybe you can change it to Calibri and get it onto one page, and it looks nice that way too. So play around with those fonts. Obviously, they're not the only ones you can use. They're just ones that I have seen work really well for me and work well for friends that I was in college with. So I'd recommend looking at these 6 first, and then feel free to experiment and play around later if you want to. And now let's talk about the sentences on your resume. So no matter who you are, no matter what you've done, your resume is always going to have some kind of heading, whether it's like your education or some kind of professional or volunteer experience. It's always going to say the company or the organization. It's going to say the timeline, your title, and then there's going to be the chunk that talks about what you actually did. So I like to follow this formula where I go the verb, then the who or the what that was involved, and then the result. And you might notice, if anybody watching is an English teacher, I apologize, because there is no subject. There's no need to say I. They know who did it because it's your resume handing to them. So save the space, and it's really powerful too if you just start with a strong word, a strong verb. So take out the subjects. I also, because there's no subject, it's not technically a sentence. It's like put in quotes. So don't put a period either, unless you have to, because maybe it's a longer line, you're going to split up into 2 phrases, then put a period in between those. But at the end of your resume lines, there should not be periods. And that's something that should be consistent going up and down the entire resume too. It's one of those things that maybe you just slip into the habit of doing, and maybe near the end of your resume, you have a few periods and the rest of the resume does not. That looks really bad to recruiters, and your resume probably will get tossed out because you don't look like you're detail oriented enough. So it's something that people really notice if you have inconsistent formatting And you just want to put as much detail as you can. And that's where I like the half-inch margins, because it allows you to really stretch pretty far across the page to talk. Like the example that always stood out to me that we talked about actually in school when I did a professional development course is, imagine you're a lifeguard and you want to put on there how you maybe were a lead lifeguard and you were responsible for training people and putting out safety protocols. So you might sit down and on your resume type out, see these examples. Okay, no subject, so it's not I. Start with a nice verb, be like, I don't know. I ensured other lifeguards knew safety policies. That sounds nice, right? That was the verb, that was the who and what, but there's no result, and it doesn't really tell anybody a story. Then you go, okay, fine. How about this? So then I carried out safety precautions and instructed others in proper use. All right, that starts getting a little bit better. You still have some good verbs. You're telling people what you did, and you're still kind of missing that result though, right? So the overall result is if people know the proper use, but that's kind of implied still, is not very direct. And is there any more detail you can give? Like, okay, fine. I carried out safety precautions. I instructed others in the proper use, resulting in maybe a 30% reduction of injury accidents, something like that. Like that is the sentence, in quotes. That's the phrase that'll get you noticed and will make recruiters happy, because it's just all about that detail. And that's where I think we have a hard time with this intrinsically, because for so long you're told not to brag or to be humble, that kind of thing. And it's absolutely true. But there's a difference between being humble and shortchanging yourself. So you're not putting on that resume, I'm the best lifeguard ever because of this. You're saying, I followed these rules, I was diligent with my job, and it worked. There was an actual result that made people's lives better because of something that I did. There's nothing braggy about that. There's nothing arrogant about that. It's just being honest and providing the detail that tells the full story. So that's where I find when I help people with the resumes, it's oftentimes like the most growing pain is getting them to get over that desire to shortchange themselves and really go deep and explain all the detail, because you might think you have to only say, 5 or 6 words because it's not a sentence and it's just starting with a verb. But as we'll see here when we look at mine, there's a lot of words on the page and they're just not full sentences, but they tell the story. So like here's my actual resume. I did block out some of my information, but as you can see, I do put education first, because up until this point, it's still what I've done the most. I'm very proud of what I've done so far in college. Probably next year, I'm going to switch it and I'll put education on the bottom, but this has been working for me so far. So I put my school on the top left. I like that nice vertical bar divider. You can play around with whatever looks good for you, whatever you like. Then you put my degree that I've earned, Bachelor of Science, Business Administration. And then here's the location, University Heights, Ohio. And then finally on the far right is the date I graduated. Now, this was always tricky because of how long my official degree is, Bachelor of Science, Business Administration. It just takes up so much of the line. If you have a shorter title or just like a Bachelor of Arts or a Bachelor of Science, you can put BS, BA. Makes it a little bit easier and it gives a little bit more appealing space, but it is what it is for me. I list my GPA because it was high enough that you can. If it's over 3.5, list it. If it's under 3.5, don't list it. Talk about my major, my minor, and I explain what I've done. I even give a little bit of detail because people might not know what it is. As you can see too here at the bottom, I did add a few more dates to my resume just to tell people how long I've been in these different honor societies and showcase that it wasn't all just like a last minute push to get things on my resume. Some I accomplished as a sophomore and held all throughout college, etc. Talk about my studying abroad. I did see in the chat, I think that you're a high school junior, so we can come back to that in a little bit, but keep in mind, if you do any kind of experience or whether you are at a different institution, it deserves another line, especially if it's like studying abroad. People were impressed by that. It's good to show. And then here's a section of my experience. I took this off of my one of my resumes when I was an intern a couple of years ago. And so here you can see exactly what I talked about. Name of the organization and my title on the left, the location, and then over on the far right, the date range when I did those jobs. And then you can see what I did. So, like for example, under Eaton, when I was an intern for that company in Cleveland, that second bullet point there, researched current economic and political climate of Brazil to inform, update, and assist team of 4 with preparing for monthly strategic meetings with CEO, CFO, corporate treasurer, and supply chain management to adjust forecasts and expectations. That is incredibly long, but it follows my entire formula. It has strong verbs, it has the who and what and who that was involved, and it has a rough result, to make sure we adjusted our forecasts. Or, better yet, my Crown Castle one, actually, no, we'll do the Confessor one. Analyzed previous income statements and current year cost data in SAP to create 7 budget templates so managers can adjust figures more easily and precisely. It shows a very clear picture that what I did made a difference for the people in my group and impacted their time. And as any recruiter or anybody above you is going to know, time is very valuable. So if you can save people time, they're going to be very happy with what you've done. And so that's just a quick example of what it looks like to lead with a strong verb, show some kind of who and what, and then a result. All right. Now for the last few minutes here, we will move on to the cover letter, and then I will look at some of the questions. So the cover letter is something that often comes along with the resume, and all too often is just as standard as the resume and just kind of matches it. The cover letter you should really customize to match the job posting that you see, to match the company that you're applying to. And even if you know anything about the person you are applying to directly, it should be customized for them directly, the person who's going to be reading it. You want to basically think about this question: why would you hire you for that job? And that's where you can use the cover letter to expand on some of the concepts that you're trying to prove about yourself in your resume, to showcase some of your personality like you do on your LinkedIn profile, and to kind of bring all that together into a really concise personal document that makes your case for employment. It should be set up in block formatting, and I kind of show a picture of this in a little bit. And for consistency, just try to keep it in that 1/2 inch, 1 inch margin range. Nothing too crazy on either end. Just make it nice and business standard. The overall heading of it, if you are mailing it or if you're attaching it online to go to an application, it's a good practice to put it out like a standard business letter, where in the top 3 lines, it's your name and your address, single space in between, the date spelled out. Don't just put like 6/24/20, spell out June 24th. You know how to spell the months, it's okay. Put in a blank line, and then put out the employer information. And the one I typed out here is really about as much as I could think of adding. If you don't necessarily know their department or division, you don't have to try to go crazy trying to find it. Some companies may not be that detailed. Just make sure it's a nice professional address. And then lastly, the salutation line. Try not to use to whomever it may concern. That's so cliche. It's so boilerplate. You can do better than that. Even by saying, dear prospective employer, it just sounds a little bit better than to whom it may concern. Also, a big note here, I have like Mr., Ms., Doctor. Really make sure if you are going to use Mrs. versus Ms., like make sure you know the person is comfortable with that label, because sometimes they are not. And when in doubt, just use Ms. It's much easier and it will save face later. I don't think a cover letter needs to be any more than 4 paragraphs, by the way. It can be 1 full page, but quite honestly, when you put that full official header on, it takes up about 1/4 of the page anyway, so you don't have that much room to work with. I think this 4 paragraph system is a really clean, easy way to make your memorable case to whoever's reading it. So first, start with an introduction. Who are you? Which position are you officially interested in? Because a lot of times, especially if you're applying for an internship or maybe even a scholarship, there could be a lot of different offerings. So just say like, hi, my name is Ryan McGowan. I'm interested in the, business economist internship. And how did you hear about it? This is a big line. The first paragraph, the first line or 2 is the place to name drop. If someone referred you to this position, if you know someone at that company, if someone forwarded you to that posting, say it. You're like, oh, you're an accountant, my cousin's name told me about this position and said I'd be a good fit for it. Drop that in there. It's important that recruiters know if you have connections at the company. Next, and this only has to be maybe 3 lines or 3 sentences, 3 sentences. Does not have to be very long, just very quickly who you are, what you want to do. Then a little bit about you. This could be your biggest paragraph. Why do you want to work there? And what piece of your resume really stands out? What is something that based on your knowledge of the company, they really want to hear? So don't be afraid to tell that personal story. Like when I applied for a couple internships when I was in college, I often used my second paragraph because I was applying for a lot of financial internships and that was my major. I did a lot of writing on my second paragraph about how I've always been interested in finance because I watched Mad Money with my dad a lot. Like I always was interested in that. And like that was just something that's been a hobby and a passion of mine for a long time. And now it was time for me to try it in the real world and really see it. So I put a little detail in there about why I really cared about that job in the first place, why I cared about what I chose to study in school. Humanizes me a little bit, shows me my personality, shows me what I'm driven by. So it's your chance to really just explain, why you think you're a good fit. If you're looking for one word to remember each, it would be introduction, and then the second paragraph, qualifications. Just what did you do at school? What have you been interested in? What do you study? What makes you a good fit for that job? Third paragraph is about them. And I know that might sound a little weird because they work for that company and like they should know. But basically, you want to show them that you know about them. So you want to take that third paragraph to explain what do you know about that company or the industry. Maybe they're and this is something great that you can find on LinkedIn. You can search the company name and articles about them will come up, whether they, there was talk of them in some kind of merger or they're being bought out, or maybe they hit some kind of milestone like 10 years of service or whatever it may be. Mention that. Show that you care about that company, because so many people are lazy and will just submit a cover letter that pretty much is the same as every other cover letter. They maybe change a couple of the sentences here and there, but they don't really change it. If you take the time to lay out a whole paragraph when you have very valuable and limited space that says, or maybe it could something like, I love your mission statement. Like for Covestro, we have our 3 main values are courageous, colorful, and curious. I talked about how much I love that. I think those are 3 great ways to describe who I am. I saw a lot in myself versus that mission statement, those values. Say that. Show that you spent some time on their website, that you've clicked around and you're interested in the company. Because how else are you supposed to get someone interested in you if you can't prove that you're interested in them? So don't be afraid to put a little bit out there that you can help them and you see something that they've been doing. And then lastly, really easy, a closing. How can they contact you? It's super important, first of all. Lay out a nice email address, hopefully the same one on your resume, and a cell phone number. But then also, don't just say, I look forward to hearing back from you. Say, I will follow up with you next week by phone, or I will email you next week to follow up. Be direct and tell them to expect you to call them back, because that, again, just like referencing something about them, that shows you that you're driven for that position and that you want it. So many other people are just kind of very passive, like, oh, I hope they call me back. No, follow up, because even if it's a no, maybe you can get feedback and that's still valuable. So show that you're different than other people and say, I'll be in contact with you next week by phone to check in on my application. And that makes a huge difference. And then obviously a blank line, sincerely, a couple blank lines, your name. If you can, print it and actually physically sign it and scan it as a PDF. That's a really nice touch that, especially now, most people don't do, and it can help you stand out. All right, last few minutes here. I do want to talk about a few mistakes that you should avoid when writing your first resume cover letter. Leave out any type of phrasing like, I believe I'm a good fit. I think I'm qualified for this position. Just say, I am, or skip it altogether. Oftentimes again, back to the point I was making about the resume, where oftentimes we shortchange ourselves. We're so conditioned to have to sort of qualify what we're about to say or minimize what we're about to say. That's not the time to do it. Don't do it. Take out write whatever you want and then go back through and review it and strike out anytime you think, I believe you should hire me, or I believe I fulfill the, um, job posting guidelines or anything like that. Take it out. It's weak. You're wasting space and you're not doing yourself any favors with it. Take out other stuff like, I would be thrilled if, to get this position. I would be happy to hear back from you. I'm looking forward to hear back from you. Those kind of indirect would, coulds, get rid of them. Same thing as the I believe, I think. They're not doing you any favors. They're taking up space. They're weak, and everybody else is going to use them because they sound polite, but they're really not. I mean, they're just kind of fillers and they're not constructive. Also, avoid overly passionate or emotional language. Be like, um, especially like at this point, like at 18, 19, 20, my whole life, like I've been doing this. No, you haven't. Like, come on. Like for most of our lives, we were like in middle school and like elementary school. Like we were not thinking about our careers yet. So don't do that kind of hyperbole. It might not hurt you all that much, but you're just, again, you're wasting stuff that you could be saying much more dynamically, much more purposefully. And more importantly, everybody else says it too, so you don't want to. Don't write with those kind of cliches that everybody uses because it just doesn't have the same kind of meaning as something you truly believe. Try to avoid flattery too, of the company or of the person. So if you're writing, about Apple, be like, I think your phones are the best, and I would love to be a part of that. Everybody tells them that, like they know their phones are good, or they know their software is good. Don't waste your time on that. And also, and this is really bad too, don't try to flatter the recruiter or the person you're writing directly. That's a really heavy-handed and just kind of gross way to do it, and it's not going to get you very far. Last tips, especially since a lot of things are submitted online, you're not mailing, letters and cover letters and resumes together. So one, you don't need to put the enclosure : resume that a lot of people might recommend you put at the end of your cover letter because it's all attached by PDF, and it's a kind of antiquated way to do it. But always send or attach a PDF. Do not send the Word document unless you are directly requested to do so, like maybe their system doesn't use it or doesn't handle it very well. Because with Word, you'll see the blue lines, the red lines for spellings like of your name and other things. It can be changed. It doesn't look good. Send that official PDF or a like a .rtf to those. Both kind of work as long as it's not as editable as Word may be. You also should be making a master resume, and this is really good too, especially if you are a little younger and you may not have a lot of direct experience yet. Make that put good time into building your header to be like your name and your contact information the way you want it. So your phone number, your email, your address. Put down your education, and the earlier you start, the easier it is to start putting in every club you've done, things you've done with those clubs. I personally have a master resume that's 4 pages long, but it goes back to things I've done my like junior year of high school. I'm never going to use it again, but it's just a record of everything that I've been doing. Basically, almost like a CV idea, because that's a little bit different than a resume. But you find it makes it so much easier when you are applying for different jobs because it gives you a huge pool of things to pull to get your experience from. So maybe you find a job posting that asks for certain experience, and you have that somewhere in your master. You can just copy and paste it into the 1-page clean cut version. And then you apply for another job that has a whole different set of skills required. You might already have that all written in your master, and you can just cut and paste to make the customized resume for each posting. It makes it so much easier that way, and it'll save you so much of a headache later. So I really recommend just start throwing everything you can onto a master resume. And that goes to my next point here. Regularly update everything. Get in the habit of just running over your resume, getting the habit of going over your LinkedIn profile, and just making sure everything is current. Like maybe, a club only is for a semester when you go to college. Make sure you adjust that you're not still involved with that club, or make sure you adjust that it's finished for now or like on a break. Just keep everything updated. It's a really good habit to get into professionally and for a lot of other aspects of your life too. And your professional development is no exception. So make sure you stay on top of it. And all of these tips really just are thinking in the future. It'll make it so much easier for you. Every minute you spend now when you might have a lot of time makes a huge difference and saves you time later when there could be a lot more added stress. So just do your future self a favor and just update everything, keep that master list, and make things a lot easier. So that I want to be conscious of our time here, so I'm going to wrap up. So thank you for joining us tonight. I hope that was helpful. These are tips that I've learned from my experience. They're by no means the end-all be-all of resume, cover letter, and LinkedIn advice, but the things that have worked really well for me so far, and the things that I'm going to continue using. So I hope that was helpful for you. Thank you.
Ryan, we did have a question.
Okay.
Is it still possible? Jack's a junior.
Okay.
He wants to create a LinkedIn profile, but he was wondering if he should start one now or if he should hold off until he's a senior.
Start one now. There's never, even if you make it and you start going to the experience section, you go, I don't really have anything yet. That's okay, because what you can start doing is connecting with people. You can connect with your parents, relatives, people your parents work with, people your relatives work with, your friends' parents. There's not right now, I think on LinkedIn, I think I have close to like 600 or 700 connections. I didn't do that over the last 2 years. These are everything that I've been meeting since I made my profile, I think probably in 11th or 12th grade, because I saw where that was going, and it's just also a good educational resource, because if you start now, even though it might only make a difference of 1 year, that's one extra year when you can be seeing what people are posting, seeing what content on LinkedIn gets a lot of engagement, see where people see how people are speaking on that platform. Because even in the last probably 3 or 4 years, I've already seen a change in the way recruiters post things and the way different organizations engage people who don't work for them on LinkedIn. So the faster you can get involved with that and start learning the ropes yourself, it'll just really pay off for you in the long run. So even if you're a junior right now, absolutely would recommend making it. If anything, people will be more impressed that you're starting so early and ready to go. So that's a great question. I love the initiative, but go ahead, make one this summer.
And then he's asking, how should I specify my degree level?
Excuse me. So that's tricky, because most of the drop-down boxes always say high school or GED, and then some college or a degree, because it's unfairly assumed that most people on those platforms have at least gone through high school all the way. With that being said, no one's going to hold back or hold it against you if you just pick high school diploma, even though you technically haven't earned it yet, if you have every intention of getting it. And that's where your education section of both your resume and your LinkedIn is really important, because just to fulfill the box, say high school diploma or GED equivalent, I think that's like the full box. And then in the education section, just say your high school expected graduation and then your graduation year. I all throughout college, for example, that was me. It was John Carroll University. And then on the far right, it was expected graduation, May 2019. Because, even as a freshman, a lot of things could have happened that maybe delayed me by a semester or by a year, but it's not right to leave that off, because it's still good information. So in this present moment, I'm prepared to graduate then, whenever it may be. So put that out there, but no one's going to look at that and go, I can't believe he's on this platform. I can't believe he's trying to use this because he is a junior or anything like that. So just, put whatever year is fair for you and just move on with it. People aren't going to look at and scrutinize it that much. They're going to be more impressed that they found you on LinkedIn.
And should I do the same for my specialization category? Put what I'm currently interested in?
Yeah, I actually remember having that problem, because you wrestle over that first level, and then you finally decide what you want to do, and then you get hit with that second one about specialization. But yeah, that's a really good way to do it, actually, is put something that you are really interested in. It could even be, for example, like with me, I put finance in that because I knew going to school I wanted to be a finance major. So you can think of it in two ways. You can pick something that you're really passionate about now, or you can pick something that you think you would be interested in picking as a major or as a further specialization next when it's finally applicable. Because there's really no not applicable section, and that you may as well put something that really interests you. So that's a really good way to do it. I think that's the smart way to do it. Let's see.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming tonight. And Ryan, as always, thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. We really appreciate it, and we're so glad to offer this for the community. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. This was fun. This was third and final for now. A little bittersweet, but I really enjoyed it. I think this is something that can be really helpful for people. Thank you for being here tonight with us. And you have my contact information, so please don't hesitate. I'm already very impressed that you were asking these questions and you want to get involved. So talk to me. You can find me on LinkedIn too. Just search Ryan McGowan Covestro or John Carroll, and I will pop up. I will gladly add you once you get your profile set up, and I can give you tips from there too. So with that being said, I'm going to stop sharing here, and I'm going to end the recording. And thank you all.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good night.